I have a very interesting guest. This is the guest who, over the last few days, has been very popular as far as the news, the corporate media have been talking about him. He's the young man who did the direct action at the MoveOn.org event with Kamala Harris. According to some, including Roland Martin, he viciously snatched a microphone away from a senator. And he's a very dangerous man. This man is, I'm surprised he's even free to talk to me right now. His name is Aidan Cooke, ladies and gentlemen. He's a member of the Green Party. He's a part of Direct Action Everywhere in Boulder, Colorado, but now lives in Oakland. That's according to his Facebook page. Aidan, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing very well, Tim. Just thank you again for having me on. Obviously, a lot of people in the media have been very interested in this story and very not interested in, hearing maybe more than one side of it. So I'm really interested in what we're going to be able to talk about.
No, absolutely, man. Well, thank you for taking time out. I'd like to get right to it. Aidan, what was your intentions? Were you trying to viciously attack Kamala Harris at this event?
So, I think you pretty much nailed it on the head when you talked about this a couple of days ago. But, this is Direct Action 101. The idea was get up as nonviolently as possible, but also having to be sort of disruptive to get a message across, which is that, so this was the MoveOn Big Ideas Forum, right? People are talking about lots of sort of mainstream progressive ideas. One very big idea that's not being talked about is that, in California alone, which is my new adoptive home state, Senator Harris's longtime home state, in just this state alone, every year we raise and kill over 1 billion animals for food and some other uses, but mostly food. And so not as only is that kind of going against our values, and we can talk about, animal rights and how that fits into our values as a nation of compassionate animal love.
And Aidan, I definitely want to get to all of that. But first, I got to be a little hard on you and just say, Aidan, like, did you consider the fact you may have scared this woman and scared all the people that were there? I mean, we got the way they talk about it. It was almost like a terror attack. You frightened everyone in the establishment. Is that typically how Action Everywhere does this? Direct Action Everywhere does it?
Sure. I mean, it's definitely not our intention to cause fear in anyone. And I think to the extent that some of the folks on stage, certainly one of the people on stage that day has been talking about it.
I'm going to ask you about something else. You became a newsmaker this weekend, and I have to tell you, the first time I saw this video, I watched it with my stomach in my mouth in my stomach, because that's you, like your 89-pound body that you threw between Senator Kamala Harris and a protester. I was scared for you. I'm guessing in the moment that was like the woman that lifts the car off a child. What was happening?
First, this is the first time I'm talking about this publicly. So I've spent the last 24, 36 hours processing this because it was a scary moment. And at the time, I wasn't thinking that. At the time, I was thinking, gosh, the Virginia Beach massacre just happened the day before where we lost 12 souls. I was thinking, white supremacy, hate crimes have increased in the last couple of years.
Maybe she's more afraid than certainly I ever intended. But I think, we could talk about my actual actions that day and what we saw in the video. I did everything that I thought I could while, getting the action done and trying to get the microphone to deliver that message, to show that I wasn't a threat, to be, polite and respectful, but also disruptive.
I hear you. Now, for anybody who's watching who may not have seen, I'm just going to run the video real quick for anybody who hasn't seen it.
Of your first big idea on the gender pay gap. Not everyone works for a corporation. Yes. And a big... Hey.
Hello. Okay. Hi. Whoa. Wait a minute, sir.
Asking for your attention to a much bigger idea than...
Thank you so much, sir, for your big idea. But we want to make sure that we are able to get through this.
I tried to point out to people that I just didn't think that you were as rude as people made it seem. I didn't find you to be as threatening as some others. In fact, as I rewinded that clip, Aidan, it looked like you had some type of interaction with her just before she and it looked like she gave you the mic. I got a couple other points about this. After close examination of this clip a couple of times, I realized that all that talking I just did wasn't even necessary, because he walked up and he asked her could he have a mic, and she handed the mic to him. Let's watch the clip one more time, y'all.
Does security need to be stepped up for the...
And a big, hey.
Look at his hands. They got eye contact. Look at this. Eye contact. Look, eye contact. Look at Kamala. Looking right at the guy. What is she doing with the mic? What is Kamala Harris doing with the mic right now? Come on now. What is she doing? He's not going for Kamala Harris. He's going for the mic. Now, I'm not saying it's right to do, but I'm saying what's right and what's wrong. Is it right that we have animals living in cages who never get to turn around? No, that's not right. Animals have feelings. We do a lot of things in this country that aren't right. So forget that. It's not about right or wrong. I'm talking about facts. And the fact is, look what she's doing with that mic. One more time. Look. Watch her lift the mic up and give it to him. See, she gave him the mic. She gave him, ladies and gentlemen, she gave him the mic. Is that how you remember it?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much exactly, as you sort of read into it. As soon as I was up on stage, I made eye contact with the senator. I was moving towards her with my hands up and said, listen, I'm sorry, this is going to be really brief. I just have something really important to ask you about. Pretty much, as much as I remember, those were the exact words I said. And I do think she heard me. You wouldn't know looking at the video kind of how noisy the room was, but it was actually quite quiet on stage. I think she heard me, and you could see sort of in her facial expression, she was very confused at first, and then she sort of lifted up the mic. And that's not to say, I think, that I can't be certain that she didn't, have a moment of fear, but I think that by the time I was close to her, I hope that she realized I wasn't a threat. I was there just to talk to her.
Right. I mean, that's how it appeared to me. But, just as a devil's advocate, I want to make sure I'm respectful of the fact that it is a woman. It's a woman of color. She's on stage. I don't know what that really has to do with it, but people are making point of that. The fact that she's just a woman in general, that it wasn't a stage full of women, and that, a man that they don't know, though I may not have been afraid for my life. It gets, we look at you look like a nice guy. I mean, you got the man bunt going on, you got the beard. I love beards. I'm trying to grow mine out. You don't look like a bad guy, but looks can be deceiving, and you know how that is.
Yeah. So, I guess I do really want to honor that, like, the total possibility that any of the women on stage at the event may have had a moment where they weren't sure what was going to happen, and they might have been afraid. What I think, is really important that we settle on is that in and of itself can't be a reason not to take political action. There's so many, like, if you look, at the history of, like, these kinds of things being talked about, like actions like this, absolutely the politics of fear is so often used to try to silence and repress activists and say, I mean, of course, it's always, there's never the right time or the right way to challenge the system, to challenge, politicians. You're always going to face a lot of backlash. When I disrupted Bernie Sanders 3 years ago, there was the same level of vitriol, and there just wasn't that kind of identity politics element to latch onto for people. So I think sometimes in political action, there might be a little bit of discomfort, and that's just part of it.
Yeah, I was definitely going to get to the Bernie situation just to show that this is not some rare occurrence, that this happened before. Your organization, this is what you do, aka direct action everywhere. Like that's what we do. But I wanted to point out that I did see there was a part of the video that's really hard for people to hear. I could have swore you said thank you when you got the mic. I don't know if you remember that part, but I listened a couple times. It's like, did he thank her for the mic?
I think I did.
Yeah.
It's certainly, like, it would be something I hope I would have said. There was a lot of adrenaline in my system at that moment too. Yeah. So I'm not exactly sure what I said, but anytime we're doing this kind of thing, absolutely, I want to be as polite as possible, as unterrifying as possible, and still say, listen, I'm really sorry. I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be disruptive. But there's something that we, whatever it is, and this is, for all activists, I think, share this.
There we go.
We need to talk about this.
Absolutely, my friend. Absolutely. And like educating people to how activism works. There was a lady there, a moderator, I should say, not a protester, a moderator of the event, a young lady by the name of jean-pierre. She's getting lauded and praised. They say that she risked her life, dealing with you. I don't know how that feels for you, where you're being, I don't know, I guess the assumption is that, you're, like I said before, you're a dangerous guy. I just took a little umbrage. I don't know about the way they were holding her up like, she saved, like she dumped in front of a bullet, like, I don't know, like you were an assassin and she threw herself into harm's way. I don't want to belabor the point, man. I just didn't see it as such a devastating event, such a terrorist act as some people saw it. And I actually support activism, and I know that it's for a good cause. But just to put a fine head on it, is there anything about Kamala Harris that you were protesting? Was your protest, did it have anything to do with Kamala Harris, about her stances, her policies, or her as a politician?
So in Senator Harris's home state, and not just the state where she's currently a senator, but the state where she was once for several years a district attorney and then the attorney general, there are several of course, there are always lots of political prosecutions going on, but particularly concerning my organization, Direct Action Everywhere. Several of my friends are facing up to 7 felony charges each just for investigating and taking just photos and videos inside of factory farms to try to bring the truth to the public about animal abuse and the climate catastrophe that factory farms are feeding into. Facing like many, many years in prison for taking photos and videos. So that's definitely one like particular thing to Senator Harris that I'm asking her. My intention was to ask her to take a really strong stance against political prosecutions of activists and journalists.
Got it. So I was under the impression it really had nothing to do with Kamala Harris, but there was some stances that she's taken in the past that you and your organization have issues with.
Well, I think in some ways the issue is the stances she hasn't taken. And there are all kinds of stances. Look, on another day, I would very much consider, disrupting Kamala Harris for her record as a prosecutor in California, and not just, building her career, putting hundreds, if not thousands of especially Black and brown folks behind bars for things like cannabis possession, but, resisting sentencing reform and fighting to uphold wrongful convictions. There's all kinds of things we could be talking about Kamala's record. And I think it's really important to remember, like, yes, she is a political figure. She's not, I think there's something that happens when you are taking, an oath of public service, you're putting yourself in the public, and that where, she's not just, and I think a lot of the criticism online is sort of like reducing her to this two-dimensional version of herself as she's just a Black woman and that's the end of the story. And no, it's not the end of the story. She has a lot of political power. She has a lot of political agency, and the way that she's wielded that power makes her someone who is open to, at the very least, open to protest.
And when you say they made her two-dimensional as just a Black woman, both her identity, explain that a little bit more. What's going on online that makes you feel that way?
I think a lot of commenters, are not willing to consider, like, take into account, setting even aside, I think, her record, just her status as a political figure. And that if we start to kind of allow that the political figures are off limits for disruption like this, for political action, I think that's a really dangerous precedent. But particularly in the case of Kamala Harris, there could totally be something that I'm missing. It could be that I'm the one missing nuance here. But I was surprised to see some of the people who are coming to her defense, who are exactly the people who've really dedicated years of their lives to fighting against some of the exact things that Kamala Harris has built her career doing.
Very interesting.
Including, if you want me to keep going on this, I can.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to have a conversation. I mean, one of the things that bothers me, I'll go first. I'll just say, folks who said it was great. In fact, it was their motto for a while there. Democrats were saying, go after Republicans, go after them in public, shout them down at the gas stations, go after them in restaurants, and no one apologized. Everyone thought that was the way to do it. The resistance was to confront Republicans wherever they were, lawmakers.
Out! Vote you 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 out!
Where are the babies?
Vote you out! Vote you out!
Yeah.
Vote you out! Vote you out! Vote you out!
Turtle head.
Vote you out! Vote you out!
Public servants, wherever they were, and they didn't say be nice about it. They didn't say be careful, you don't want to frighten anybody. It was just go after them. So I'm really having a problem understanding what's the difference between what you did there in a public setting in front of thousands of people and someone walking up to a Mitch McConnell in a parking lot where there aren't thousands of witnesses. You get what I'm saying? And he's alone or he's whatever, and they're just following what Maxine Waters or some other people may have told him to do, which was make your presence be known. Let them have it. Get in their face. Be disruptive. That's how I see it. Do you recall that sort of like that battle cry that the Democrats had for a while?
Absolutely. And, not just the Democratic Party itself, but all sorts of oppositional groups across the left. And I think, I hate to say it this way, but you know as well as I do what that is, which is that, I think Democrats love to make, jabs at Republicans or at the right to say that they sort of forget their ideals when they're put under pressure, and that, when they're challenged on something or when their ideals don't work, for the short-term convenience, those things go out the window. And we love pointing out hypocrisy in politics. And I think there's some, really valid criticism that could be made of this action, but I think a lot of it is maybe, now we're the ones being protested. We want to find something,
hypocrisy is hypocrisy, right? So it's we can get into gradations of hypocrisy, but yeah, I get your point totally. How they say, well, the evangelicals, for instance, like why are you putting up with Donald Trump? Well, why do you're used to being an activist, and now you got a problem with people acting. I want to just go back to the Bernie Sanders point you brought up, because folks, I don't know if you noticed or not, but Bernie Sanders had his own interruptions on the podium, so to speak.
Mike check!
Mike, check!
Senator Sanders, you said the greatness of a nation is measured by how we treat its most vulnerable.
The greatness of a nation is measured by how it treats its most vulnerable.
And we can't be near how we treat them hard.
Animal liberation now! Animal liberation now! Animal liberation now!
Animal liberation now! Animal liberation now! Animal liberation now! Animal liberation now!
During the 2015-2016 campaign when he was going from state to state. I don't have a clip of Aidan, but Aidan, didn't you interrupt Senator Sanders at one point?
I sure did. So me and I was with 5 other people who, this must have been the 12th time at least. I mean, it must have been the 8th time our organization tried to disrupt Bernie. And there were all kinds of other folks doing it too. So yes, I disrupted Bernie in almost exactly 3 years to the day before the Kamala disruption.
And you mentioned earlier, and I just want to go back to it because I kind of pushed it back and put a pin in it. You didn't receive this type of, this type of outrage wasn't going on when you guys were interrupting Bernie. Where was it? Do you recall?
Well, it definitely wasn't the, top 3rd trending story across social media for almost a week. There was a lot, there were plenty of people who were upset about that action, and I got plenty of, very unkind messages in my Facebook inbox. But, in some ways, I actually think it was the same level of vitriol, not from the media. The media didn't engage at the same, in the same way. But I think from a lot of people on social, in terms of just on social media, there was almost that level of anger and frustration. But there wasn't so much, like there wasn't anything for people to latch onto in the way that there has been with the identity politics element of this action. So I think it sort of like frayed out a little more quickly, or just kind of steamed out.
Well, I'd like to educate the audience and anybody watching. This is going to go several places. Hopefully, people can get a better understanding of what activist organizations like Direct Action Everywhere, what their intentions really are. So, say I'm a person who knows nothing about direct actions. Why are direct actions needed to get the word out about your cause?
Yeah, so a friend of mine likes to use this analogy of, if you're a defendant in a criminal trial, one reason that it's really good to have a lawyer is that it's really important that the jury likes the defendant. Like, you really want the jury to see the defendant as, as a person and really empathize with them. And also sometimes you want to use tactics in a courtroom that don't make you look very likable. So for instance, you might need to really aggressively cross-examine a witness. And the magic of having a lawyer in a courtroom is that your lawyer can go out and kind of be the bad guy and go really hard against the prosecution's witnesses while still protecting the image of the defendant and making them look good. And I kind of like to think of that as the role of direct action, and especially nonviolent direct action in movements. Is I'm here and I'm saying, here's this issue, and we're not talking about this issue. It's being totally ignored. We really need to be talking about it because it's really important and it affects all of us. And I keep trying to, we might keep trying to bring it up and people just don't want to talk about it. So we need to kind of force the issue. And I don't need you to like me. I don't need to look good. I don't, you can hate me as a result of my action. If it also results in you thinking more about the issue when you never would have before. So something I'll do after, a protest like this is I'll say, hey, if someone's asking why this was effective or disagrees with it, I'll say, hey, did you think about, in this case, animal rights last month? I'll say, no. Did you think about it yesterday? No. Are you thinking about it today? Are you going to think about it tomorrow? Have you maybe, at least it's been, barely. And unfortunately, I think in this case, the media just went so crazy on some of the stuff that the issue got buried largely, which is really regrettable. But generally speaking, what happens is now suddenly this issue that you wanted to ignore, the public has a hard time, or society has whatever the issue is having a hard time engaging with, is suddenly at the forefront.
Got it. Totally got that. And after this, I do want to get in more into the issue because I think that's what we should close on. We should have that be our main focus. But I just want to remind folks, like, I've been doing political commentary for about 6 or 7 years, and I remember, I'm sure most people remember the Freddie Gray case in Baltimore, where the young man was, I think his spine was broken by police officers. He lost his life. Nonviolent action, unarmed man in the back of a paddy wagon or a police van. And I want people to know that for 4 or 5 days, people were protesting the death of Freddie Gray. They did so without any violence whatsoever. But you didn't hear about it on news because it wasn't newsworthy to them. The newsworthy, the corporate media, the cameras, the helicopters, and the commentary from MSNBC, Fox News, all of the media didn't come until someone did something that caused damage. Okay, so what's the message that's being taught? The message is, no matter what your cause is, it could be the death of an innocent person. Remember, Baltimore ended up paying millions of dollars to Freddie Gray's family. It was a wrongful death. It took violence for that to even become something that got any type of focus by our media. That's the message that's being taught, not just to Direct Action Anywhere, but Black Lives Matter and a host of many, I'm leaving out so many other organizations where if you don't make news, you will get no coverage, no matter what your issue is. So this is not new. This is what happens. Aidan, tell us more right now. Let's pretend you got to get that. You were able to hold the mic. You know what I mean? Like you wanted to do at this MoveOn.org event. What did you want to say to the people about your cause?
I'll answer that, and I'll really quickly, I'm really glad you brought up Freddie Gray because that's a perfect segue. And so one thing, like, not just is it teaching, all of us, and should everyone in the public be taking the lesson from that, okay, in order to get issues onto the table, you have to be disruptive. But what I think, another thing the Freddie Gray case teaches us is that in the eyes of the media, property, like the property that people started to destroy on, day 5 or whatever, is more valuable than human life. Like Freddie Gray's death wasn't media worthy, wasn't newsworthy, but a window getting smashed or a car being lit on fire, whatever it is in a riot, is newsworthy. And so that's exactly one of the things that those protesters are trying to highlight is, look, in our society, our media is valuing property over human life, and that's unacceptable. And I think something that this case highlights is that the slightest discomfort, but like no matter like any interest of a human will always trump in our society, in the eyes of the media, any interest of any number of non-human animals, or of like any immediate interest. Even let's say an immediate interest of a human trumps this kind of far off in the interests of that we can't think about that have to do with climate catastrophe, which we can address in a moment. So in this case, that someone, people feeling a bit of discomfort, getting protested, or even fear, even like genuine fear for a split second, that's something. But how does that compare to the kind of, in this case, let's talk about the horrific violence that's being perpetuated against non-human animals in farms and slaughterhouses across the country, across the world. Like just something so far beyond our ability to imagine, suffering of the worst kind. But that's worth nothing compared to just slight human discomfort. So I think that's exactly what I'm trying to highlight with actions like the MoveOn. And what we were trying to say is basically, look, talking about big ideas here. How about the big idea that by committing these atrocities against our fellow animals on this planet, not only are we undermining our values as a society of compassionate animal lovers, we all like to identify, Americans love to identify as animal lovers, and yet we're kind of letting this industry exist. And not only is it, creating all this incredible amount of suffering, but it is preparing to drive our society off a cliff. Animal agriculture is one of the leading contributors to climate change, contributing over 25% of emissions, probably responsible for a much higher percentage of warming because of deforestation in the Amazon for animal feed companies. So it's great that over the last few years, climate change has finally been started to be acknowledged in the media and by politicians. And this cycle, actually, yes, politicians are sort of being challenged to present their climate plans. They're all radically inadequate. They all completely fail to address the urgency of this issue, and they all completely ignore one of the main contributors, which is animal agriculture.
Very well said. Very well said. I remember when I was coming up there, as far as we went for environmental concerns or climate change, was recycling. It was like that was the big thing. Like, if you just recycle, everything will be okay. And we know that's not nearly enough emissions. I know we talk a lot about just the raising of cattle, the way they have to maintain that cattle, what that does to our ozone layer. There's so many issues regarding climate, and I think it's important and very important for these issues to be brought to bear. As a member of the Green Party, is there someone? I don't think Kamala is a champion on the climate change. Is there anyone in the Green Party that you look to for this, or is it at the forefront of climate change issues?
It's really tough because even sort of in the Green Party space, I mean, first of all, even the environmental movement broadly really, really struggles to accept the role of animal agriculture, and it's still totally forgotten about. And I think this is because, so you just brought up recycling as a great example of how we tend to really want to reduce complex political issues to some simple thing that we can either something really simple that we can do and some simple personal consumer change we can make, because we're such a consumerist society. We need to just be able to do something tangible. And I love the idea that, if I spend my money in a slightly different way, then problem solved and my hands are clean. And I actually heard a really funny comment. Someone else in my organization, in Priya, just disrupted Jeff Bezos today. Same exact kind of thing as the Kamala disruption, jumped on the stage, tried to get the mic. And someone commenting on that video on social media was saying, Amazon really should do more about the environment and do more to protect animals. Like maybe a green shipping option for every time I want to check out on Amazon, maybe I just get to check, a green shipping option. And it's like, we want solutions to these problems where we just get to make some teeny change to the way that we consume, and that, maybe we shell out a couple extra dollars that we'll never notice, and like problem solved. And that's just not how this works.
Yeah, Aidan, that's because they want to protect the corporations and big business and agencies, but they don't want. So they use the the individual as if the individual human being is really the culprit behind climate change. I mean, it's so ridiculous. I mean, it's laughable, but if it's not funny, but it's almost laughable that they like to equate what you personally do with your bag, your Dorito bag, to what's going on in our society. With the polar ice, melting or whatever you are. It's just crazy. I do want to mention one thing. I'm gonna ask you this question. I'm very serious in this question. Did Kamala Harris put you up to this?
When we disrupted Bernie, there were many people online who were just convinced that we were Hillary. We were hired by Hillary to do it. And in some ways, at the time, I actually thought it would have been much more reasonable to think we were hired by Bernie to do it, which is exactly what you're thinking. Is people were furious at us for disrupting Bernie, but it actually just, not only does it bring attention to the cause, but it's usually kind of a two-way street. Like in this case, it brought a lot of attention to Kamala and her campaign. And so and she actually hasn't been complaining as far as I have seen. Like I haven't seen her personally out there. I could have missed something, but I haven't seen her make a comment on this. So it's funny. It's kind of a mutual exchange in a way that I don't intend. I don't want to elevate Kamala's campaign at all. That's not my intention. I don't really care a lot if it's a byproduct, because I don't think that there's another candidate out there who I really think is, going to come close to address. I mean, I'll probably, let's see, I'm interested in Andrew Yang. I voted for Bernie last primary cycle. But I think that's really funny. And I think it's totally, the impulse is totally correct. I think she generally benefits from an action like this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you answered the question. So he's not been put up to about Kamala, and he didn't do it for the Bernie Sanders campaign or or for I don't know, CNN, who Corinne Jean-Pierre got a lot of airtime out of it. That's great. She won. She's like a hero. And you're absolutely right. Kamala Harris said she wasn't afraid at all, and everything was fine. She was even smiling and laughing about it. And I think part of that, I think it's good. I mean, she didn't want to look weak, as though they tried to make her a damsel in distress. I think Kamala's a tough cookie. At least she locked up enough people like tough cookies when she was Attorney General. I don't think she was too worried.
Yeah,
I'm mean sometimes, but I mean well. So Aidan, man, so tell people about direct action. If they want to be serious about activism, about causes that you guys are into, where would they find out more information? How could they get involved?
You can find us at directactioneverywhere.com. Another group that I really want to elevate that I've been paying a lot more attention to lately is Extinction Rebellion. And I think what both of these groups highlight, Direct Action Everywhere is focused more on sort of the individual animal, and breaking down the sort of barrier we've built up in our society between humans and other animals. But also Extinction Rebellion is focused more on the climate. But they both give an answer, a sort of response to this collective, let's just say collective psychosis even, that you and I were just talking about, with this consumerism, this desire, like, I need some tangible thing I can do. And we've all been taught that all we really are worth to society is as consumers and money spenders. And so how can I change the way I spend my money? And what we're offering as an alternative to that is actually, no, your power, you do have power. Individuals do have power. Your power doesn't come from your wallet. It doesn't come from your role as a consumer. It comes from you as a member of your community getting politically active. And so these are two groups that are all about creating a direct pathway where anyone who wants to can get involved, use their voice, give a little bit of time every month to help actually shift these sort of social structures. So it's not about your Dorito bag. It's about massive industrial destruction of the environment, massive industrial animal agriculture, industrial, oil production, all these things, these huge systems. We can't make those budge just by the way, changing the way we spend our dollars, but we can make them budge by doing things like what Extinction Rebellion did in London in April, which was get 6,000 people out in the streets and shut down major sites in London for 2 weeks to basically force the government to say, all right, we're losing, like we have to address this issue that we've been trying so hard to ignore because we know it's going to cost us so much money and we don't want to deal with it.
I love it. I love it. It's absolutely what I think it is. What I think people need to do is to get active, but get active politically. And that's how you get government to work for you, to get it done on a grand scale. It's not just what you do individually. But hey, do things individually. I'm not saying don't do things individually. That's great. If you want to go vegan. That's great. You lose a lot of weight, to be more healthy, be more active, whatever works for you. But be a part of, get your political activism on, where we can collectively push our lawmakers to do things on an even grander scale. Is how we operate as a country and our footprint overall, not just our individual footprint. Well, look, Aidan, man, I appreciate you very much, man, for joining me tonight for this broadcast. And once again, what's the websites again? I don't want people to forget.
Easy to find, directactioneverywhere.com and rebellion.earth, but just type in Extinction Rebellion or Direct Action Everywhere into Google. It's easy to find, really easy to get involved. And one more thing you can do, hey, go toe-to-toe with your politicians. You don't need to be a part of a group to do this. You don't need to be a part of a group to demand. And I'm not talking about emails. I'm not talking about phone messages. Sometimes that's great, but go, find your politicians and stand up and make them answer these questions that they're trying to avoid. And if you think this action was all right, anyone can do it. I mean, go in there, don't be violent, put your hands up, say, I'm really sorry, but you're ignoring this issue. We need to talk about it.
Yeah, that's right, man. Hey, look, you got to seize the moment and do what's in your heart to do. I think more people need to stand up, frankly. Well, look, Aidan, thank you for joining us tonight. I appreciate you once again taking time out, and good luck with your organization and Direct Action Anywhere, Extinction. And I forgot the last part of that, but this is recorded, so I'll go back and play it again. Look, folks, that's it. Thank you for joining us tonight. Go on the link description. When I post a video, I will put links to those websites so people can find it. They all have to do is click. All right, Aidan?
Thanks a lot, Tim. Thanks for having this conversation with me.
You got it, brother. All right, guys, that's it. I'll see you guys on the next one. Follow me at tim@timblacktv.com, Real Tim Black on Facebook and Twitter. And until we meet again, don't let nobody take your cornbread or your vote.